Cool beans. Okay. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Talking with Scientists. And today I'm joined by an old friend that I met in Rochester. And I'll let him introduce himself. Tell us where he's from.
Hi, yeah. So where I'm from, that's an interesting question. My name is Zack Bessler. I currently live in Salem, Oregon, which is about 50 minutes of Portland, Oregon, which I'm sure people have been hearing a lot about. I've lived here for just about a year. Prior to that, I lived in the middle of nowhere in central Washington, which, fun fact, it's a desert there. Most people think it's rainy, but there's 300 sunny days in the town that I was in. Prior to that, I lived in Florida for 1 year, where I worked for Disney, which Luke took advantage of.
I did.
And prior to that, I lived in Rochester, New York, where I met Luke. And I lived there for about 10, 12 years, and I grew up in Maine. So where am I from? Salem, Maine, Rochester, somewhere in there.
All right. It's all part of the history. It's all part of who you are. Yeah. So what do you do for work now, and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, sure. So
kind of a broad question. We can start large and kind of zero in.
I'll start with where I am now and sort of work backwards. How about that? So right now I'm the director of engineering at a behavioral health company. They hired me because they didn't have an engineering department and they wanted to build some cool, awesome tools.
Okay.
So they said, Zach, build us an engineering department and make these tools.
So the term engineering, I just want to pause for a second because the term engineering is a huge catch-all phrase.
Yeah.
So let's get a little more specific about what type of engineering you do and what these awesome tools that you want to build are.
Great. Yeah. So software engineering is the more appropriate term, although we typically just sort of truncate it down to engineering. But I am effectively making intricate websites is the best way to describe it. So web tools, people call them SaaS. It's called software as a service. And basically, you think of Gmail, that's a SaaS product. So that's a website that somebody made, have features and functionality that is useful.
Everybody in the New York City DOE is intimately familiar with Gmail, yes.
Exactly. So, I'm building something similar, LinkedIn, people have probably used LinkedIn or Facebook. So we're building a tool that's specifically for behavioral mental health folks. So these are therapists and social workers and stuff like that, where they can go and they can get help. They can, figure out what they need to do for their licensing. There's so many state regulations around that all of them hate figuring out. They change year to year. They're different state to state. So we're building a tool where they can just say tell me what I need to do. I'll upload the documents and then, you take it from there. Also, a lot of these people burn out. It's really difficult working in social work. It's really difficult being a therapist and hearing about all this tragedy all day long. So a lot of times they'll try to do other things. They'll join other groups. They'll do what's called SME work, which is I forgot what SMEs stand for, but they're basically they're consulting for another company. So my company, for example, hires a bunch of SMEs to say, hey, what is the best thing that we can do in this area? And they work for an hourly rate and they just do it maybe 5 hours a week, but it's a way for them to still use their skills, but sort of step away from the tragedy that they deal with on a regular basis. So we're building a lot of tools around that to help these people do the things that are sort of not related to their job that they don't want to do.
That sounds like an incredibly helpful tool that wouldn't be just useful in that field, but something that you potentially copy and transfer out to a lot of other fields too.
Yep. Yeah. And so a lot of times that happens in software, you focus in on something that you're really good at, or you have the company that I work for, they build tools to help people study for exams. When you get out of a behavioral mental health field, you need to take a big, huge licensing exam. And that's the primary business. So we already have connections with all these people. So we're starting with the people that we have these connections with, building a tool. And then a lot of times in software, maybe somebody will buy us that wants to expand it. Maybe we'll expand it to another industry. But a lot of times you start small, do something that's manageable, bite-sized, and then you kind of grow it out from there.
As many great ideas start.
Yeah.
Something spawned from necessity.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at now. At this point in my career, I'm starting to kind of make the transition into more leadership and management roles, which is pretty natural in a lot of careers. But as recently as a year or so ago, I was what I call a player coach, where I was leading a team of software engineers and doing software engineering myself. So our day-to-day basis is using our project management tool, where we have all the tasks that we're going to do.
Mhm.
And we use a lot of people in the field use something called sprints, which are just like, okay, we're going to do this amount of work in 1 week as a team. We commit to that. And then the next week it's like, okay, what are we doing now? Okay, we're going to do this amount of work. And so every day it's like, okay, take a ticket. Like, what is the thing? Mash on the keyboard. I say a lot of my job as a software engineer is like 80% thinking. I'm just like sitting there staring at it like, why isn't this working? Or like I'm thinking about like, how do I want to manage this? I want to put this over here. I want to do that. And the actual like hands-on keyboard time is only maybe like 20%.
So you're saying, like, as you've spent this amount of time in your career, you're kind of done with that aspect of it, and you're looking more toward like the bigger picture side of things rather than staring at problems and mashing on keyboards all day.
Yeah. So now what I'm doing is I've got people mashing on keyboards and staring at problems. And now I'm like, okay, what problems do I want them to work on? And okay, I've got this like set of huge amount of problems. How do I want them to all fit together?
Mhm.
How do I want my data to be structured? And I'm like, I have 3 whiteboards in my office that I like draw on and like put arrows, and, I'm doing a lot of stuff like that, which is really, really cool. And then I'm also doing stuff like looking at the budget and like, let's move some money here, and I'm talking with my boss, and there's a lot of boring things that kind of come with that.
That's
um
their own like new and interesting sets of problems
yeah,
that present yourself like as you go through a career. So
yeah, yeah.
maybe they're boring, but like there's a reason that you're gravitating toward that.
Mhm.
So
One of the things that really drew me into the kind of track that I took was the people management.
mhm.
I've always felt that like rise up the people around you and you will rise with them. And so, taking a group of people that are all very different, diverse, they have different needs, different ways of communicating, and like really getting the most out of these people, making sure that they're the happiest that they can be, the things that they want to do are the things that they're doing. And, not only is that morally accurate and appropriate, but also from like a business perspective, if they're happy employees, produce better things and are more valuable. So it's,
You sound like a boss who would be really, really awesome to work for with that attitude and that description of like how you like to lead and why you like being in the position that you are. Sounds like someone who'd be awesome to work for. And you must have like gathered those traits or learned that style from somewhere. So did you experience that like in earlier parts of your careers, leaders who
yeah.
led similarly or differently, and you kind of learned from that?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been sort of blessed with mostly amazing leaders and bosses, in and around my career. When I was working in Rochester, I had a couple of fantastic people that I worked with. One of them was a direct manager for a while. Another one was or 2 other ones were people who managed clients.
Hmm.
And the thing about managing clients is, you have to make sure that like they're happy. You have to make sure that they're getting what they want, right? That's the whole. And so I worked closely with them, and I actually managed technical aspects of relationships sort of early in my career. And that really gave me a lot of skills about like how to deal with people, how to like help people, how to make people happy. And the quote that I kind of just said to you about rising up those, that was actually one of these mentors said that to me was, when you're going into a client, like make them awesome, make them rise up, make their bosses be impressed with their work, and you will be successful. And so I kind of took that, and I was like, that's a kind of a brilliant way of looking at it. And I
Hmm.
was like, I'm going to make this work for my team too, and sort of implemented that.
I'm really glad that we started out this conversation with uh, about like as software engineer as engineering as a leader, and those kind of transferable skills are, I'm sure, not unique to software engineering, but it's also good to know that software engineering comes with kind of a stigma, and there's like because it's kind of like a black box that people don't really see into or understand, they think of it as like the Big Bang or like a bunch of nerds in a room. But the truth is that like it is as intricate and problem solving and as difficult as career is probably anything out there, and really has to build those interpersonal team building leadership skills in order for things to work. It's really not like a solo activity.
Yeah, and to like touch upon that a little bit, one of the things about software engineering is, like you're saying, the Big Bang Theory, right? Everybody thinks of us as like these huge nerds, and to some point, like I'm 3D printing a piece for a board game right behind me off
Yeah,
to my.
I
I
see
am a
all the
nerd.
board games behind you. Yeah, yeah.
Board game here.
I don't
Yeah,
say that as
great.
a bad thing. I don't say that. I
Yeah.
start every class with "What's up, nerds?" So like it's human, absolutely.
Yeah, and so the thing with, you look at the people in the caricatures in the Big Bang Theory, and they're all like amazingly brilliant, right? And so like if you're amazingly brilliant, yeah, you can be sort of weird, maybe not like overly nice, socially inept, but if you're not amazingly brilliant, then the best skill you can have is like social interaction, being able to like work in a team,
Yeah,
right? And I
that's true of
can't,
all careers.
like, because if you have that, you will stand like heads shoulders above the other nerds who can code just as well as like anyone else, but you can work on a team and that will get you a job.
You can be
uh,
the glue guy on the team. Yeah,
yeah. Yes.
yeah.
I minored in creative writing in college, and I put it on my, I don't even put like my GPAs or anything, but I put that I minor in creative writing, right? And it's like, what does that mean? I took 5 creative writing classes, right? Like, who cares? But I cannot like, what am I, 15, 20 years out of college? Every single interview I have, somebody asks me about that, brings it up and
Because
says, "Oh, I love that."
it shows you think about communication. Yeah, if you're a
Yep,
writer, you have to think about communication. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. Yeah, and I'm sure that stands out on a resume. I don't think I've ever seen that on a resume myself. So let's go all the way back to college. And when you started this journey into software engineering, like where did you go to college? What did you major in specifically? And was that always the plan, or did you kind of have like a snake route to get where you are?
Yeah, sure. So let's take it like one step further back into high
Okay.
school, where I was like a solidly middle of the road high school student. Like every teacher parent conference since I was in like 5th grade, it started out with "if Zach only applied himself," sort of thing. Like I was just one of those kids.
Yep.
And so at some point I met with a guidance counselor, and they're like, "What do you want to do? What do you like?" And I was like, well, I like video games and computers. When I was in high school, I built my own computer, which was a fantastic learning experience, very fun, and pretty easy too. I would recommend it for anyone who's thinking about it. But I was like, I like computers and video games. And they're like, well, what classes do you like? And I was like, well, like, I guess like math and science more than some of the other ones. And they're like, well, there's this thing called computer science. And I was like, well, I guess that's the 2 things I like. And so, I mean, that was like, yeah, that was like basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah, buzzwords. I almost had no idea what it really even meant.
So
And then
I'm sure a lot of the people listening don't know what computer science means. So why don't you give us the definition of computer science while we're at it?
Yeah, sure. So computer science is all about making a computer do a thing that you want it to do. So there's like a lot of different levels to it. And it's not necessarily like my printer is broken, like make my printer work. It's like I have a printer, my computer doesn't know what to do with it. So make a program that talks to my printer. That's the sort of thing. And there's this really kind of fascinating quote that I love to tell people who ask me to fix their computer. That's computer science is no more about computers as astronomy is about telescopes.
Yeah.
Which is so true. It's like you don't necessarily need to be like a computer whiz to be good at computer science. You just need logical thinking and like attention to detail, I guess, is like something else that really helps. But even these days, that's not that big of a deal. Logical thinking is like really the crux of it.
The key.
Yeah.
I remember to take a quick sidebar here, you telling me about a job interview in which you were applying for a computer science position, software, and they didn't actually ask you questions about software. They asked you like a series of logic questions that you had to solve. Till I got like
Yeah, yeah. That was for the job in Disney. They asked me if I was to turn a light bulb on in the basement and wait an hour and then turn it off, how would I go downstairs and know that it was working or not? And that was the question that they asked me. So I won't tell you the answer. I'll leave whoever's watching to try to figure that out on their own.
okay. I won't.
Maybe
I
I'll email
remember
you
our
and
conversation, so I won't say anything either. Yeah,
okay, okay.
and leave it to
Um,
the video.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I actually just hired a bunch of people, and when I have interviews like this, I ask some general type software questions to get like some information, but I don't say like, what's the square root of whatever, and I don't make them program on a whiteboard. I could go off for hours on that. There's like a big tangent that I have that I don't, but not interesting and relevant to this call. So yeah, so in high school, I came across the computer science and I said, sure. I applied to a handful of colleges. One of them was RIT in Rochester, which I got in. And then I went there and I was like, oh my God, I'm in over my head. All these people have programming experience and I have none of it.
You built a computer. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, the only thing I had done, and I felt like I was ahead of myself for this, was like program like math equations on my calculator so that I could just like punch in the number and it would tell me the answer.
And I realized I just fell in the trap of your own quote, which was computer science is no more about computers than
Exactly.
astronomy is about telescopes. And I said, you built a computer. So yeah, I
Yeah,
fell right into the trap right there.
totally irrelevant. Didn't have anything to do with my computer science 101 class. But I picked it up. It was really kind of fun and interesting. And let me tell you, if you're thinking about computer science and you go into computer 101, 102, those intro level, you will know immediately if it is for you or not. Because either it'll be super exciting and really fun, or it'll be miserable and like, and if it is, just walk away.
Just
Uh,
back away, get out early,
yeah,
transition before you're in too deep. Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
A good rule of thumb for college in general. If you're not
Yeah.
enjoying the first year, maybe find something new to do.
Because the first year, that's where like all the easy, fun stuff. I made like a program to play Battleship on my
Yeah.
computer. And it
That's
was like
when
really
the,
hard.
the first year is designed to kind of get you hooked. Think,
Yeah.
yes, this is the major I want to do.
Yep.
And if you're not hooked, then you probably shouldn't do that thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I went through college. First year was fantastic. Second year was fantastic, and then sort of my lack of ability in education caught up to me, and I was sort of a terrible student. I never learned how to study in high school. I was one of those kids.
Yeah, those things will catch up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I had a really difficult time through college. It took me far longer than it should have, but it's one of those moments where it's like, just because you fail doesn't mean you are a failure. Like here I am at 33, I'm way younger than almost every other director of engineering that I've ever met. And so who cares if I, failed some classes and well, I mean, you're wasting your money if you fail classes, but the point is I failed and I got back up and I continued. And
Yeah. And as you said earlier, you can have deficiencies of certain areas if you have skills in other areas. So if you
yeah,
can balance those
absolutely.
things out and strike a balance between those, you'll be fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so finished out college. It was a fantastic experience. I would highly recommend it for someone who wants to get into computer science. There are other ways to sort of get into software development.
Mm-hmm.
There's like boot camps. I think actually in one of your other videos, somebody talked about coding boot camps briefly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pros and cons to these like other tracks. Most of them, you have to be very self-directed. That's not me. That's something I know. And I know that wouldn't have worked out for me. Some people that works out fantastically. I've worked with some amazing software engineers that went through some of these boot camp tracks. But there are, some downsides too. Going through a computer science degree, you learn why you're doing some of the programming the way that you're doing it and what the benefits are of doing it this way versus another way, instead of just like, this is the way, right? Because that's not always going to be the way.
Yeah.
Eventually things change, and the ability to understand why you're doing the things the way you are give you that ability to change with the times and understand and see, okay, that over there is better now because of these reasons.
Yeah. I use a similar metaphor when I'm talking to students about math in high school. Where like when I was in high school, I took like a pre-calc class where we
Yep.
just learned very procedurally how to differentiate equations, do integrals and stuff. And it wasn't until I was in college and I was taking engineering classes where I realized I was like, oh, that's what an integral does. Like, that's what that means. And once you understand like what something is in a more complete sense, it allows you to use it more effectively and not just follow a procedure.
Exactly. And it's like the next thing that you do will be easier to learn because you have that sort of core understanding again.
Hmm.
Like you can tweak it and it still makes sense to you
Yeah.
when it's changed. Yeah, high school physics is like that too, right? There's like
Yeah.
a calculus-based physics and a algebra-based physics,
Yeah.
right?
Algebra-based physics for high school, a lot of vectors, free body
Right.
diagrams, sine curves, things like that. But yeah, not the deeper understanding of like, yeah, the a metaphor that I use, or an example that I use a lot is in civil engineering. You will differentiate that you, if you write an equation for the mass of a bridge and the loads on a bridge, and you differentiate a couple times, you'll end up with graphing curves that represent the shear forces in the bridge, that represent the bending moments. And then if you compare those graphs to the shapes that suspension bridges and truss bridges take, they match those curves. So you'll see that like math is like embedded in the things that you do. And once you understand that, you start seeing it places, you start tweaking it. And again, just like once it's your head is wrapped around it, you can apply it to new things.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I guess to get back to the timeline, once I graduated college, or I guess in college, I had to go on internships, which were paid by requirement of the school, which was awesome. The school also required that I be doing things related to my field, and if I wasn't, then they wouldn't send any more interns to wherever the business was, which was kind of a big deal. So the school really took care of me, which was really nice. A good internship program is so key. So I graduated with like a year and a half worth of experience, which was amazing. I came into my very first job not feeling like an imposter because I had dealt with that when I was an intern.
Yeah, so you learn the ropes already, the ins and outs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, still to this day, I get bouts of imposter syndrome. I think that that's never going to go away. I think a lot of people feel that way,
Yeah,
but
sure.
definitely like having that year of experience as an intern made me just so much more comfortable.
That
So
makes me want to ask another question about just like transitions. And a lot of people who are watching this video are seniors that are going off to college, and that transition is difficult in itself. And then another transition into the workforce. And we always have some level of imposter syndrome, but some of us experience it differently. Were you worried about the transition into like a real world workplace, or were you worried about not having the necessary skills to kind of perform?
yeah, so when I got my first internship, um, they brought me in. They interviewed me. They brought me in, and they sat me down at my desk and they gave me the things that I needed. And they said, set up your computer. And then they said, mess around with this technology for a couple of days to kind of familiarize yourself as a programming language. And I was like, okay. And so like I did, and the whole time I was just like, when I come out the other side, they're going to they're going to expect me to be an expert in this. And I'm just not. And they're going to see me for like the chump I am. And they're going to be like, how did you even get here? Like, go home, And I was just racked with fear that at any moment somebody was going to come into my office and my little cubicle and be like, we figured you out, Zach, like, get out of here.
Go home.
Yeah. And so it was just, and I remember the moment distinctly that I overcame it. There was a very like cool guy who started about a week after I did, maybe 2 weeks, right at the cubicle next to me. And he was a full-time employee. He'd been programming for however long, I don't even know. And he poked his head around my desk and asked me a question. And I knew the answer to it. And that was the moment where I was like, man, I've like figured some of this stuff out.
Welcome
This
to
like
the big leagues.
real world person just asked for my help and I was successful. Like, I think I'm going to be okay.
Nice. It's
Yeah.
like you also had a lot of people around you for a lot of your education and career that were just like good leaders and good support system. They're
Yeah.
like, and the willingness of someone to turn to a new programmer, a new employee, and ask them that question, that kind of bring them into the fold is nice. Had good
Yeah.
people working around you.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I've been very lucky in that way.
Yeah.
So then, I'm doing these internships. I did 2 9-month internships when I was in college. And then I graduate and I did them at the same place, which was kind of good and kind of bad. But I graduate and I didn't want to go back there anymore for like a whole bunch of reasons. And so I found a new job, and it was again the same sort of transition, right? Transitions that you said, they're hard, they're scary, they're like exciting, but like what's going to happen? I'm leaving like the comfort of college, which frankly I was sort of ready to be gone. Like I said, I was there kind of a little too long. But I was going to this like new world. Luckily it was in the same town. I had like a lot of friends still there. But again, now I'm like this full-time employee. Like, what are they going to expect from me? Am I going to be good enough? So there was definitely a little bit of that going into it for sure. But I was placed on this absolutely fantastic team. I'm still friends with a lot of the people that were on that team. And really just like these people raised me up. They were fantastic programmers, all very sociable, and really, helped me get to the next level, which I've, hopefully done with other people in my career as well.
It sounds like you definitely have. It sounds like you put a lot of work into being that person, lifting people up, which is awesome. Um, we've gotten like an amazing amount of good information about computer science, about careers, about leadership, about a lot of things. But like as we kind of come to the end here, come to the close, I just want to ask you like, why is, for anyone wondering, for anyone thinking about it, for anyone who knows or doesn't know already, why is computer science dope, and why should young people get into it?
Yeah. So I cite like a few things as to why it's dope. So if you've ever been like frustrated about something that you had no control over, that's just, it's so awful. You're like, I did everything that I possibly could have done and it still just did not work out. Like, why am I even trying? That frustration is just, it knows no bounds. Computer science is sort of the opposite of that. When the computer is doing the wrong thing, it's because you told it to do the wrong thing. And if you're mad at it, it's like a mirror, you're just mad right back at yourself. And so it's so frustrating, but it's not that like that frustrating that I have no control over. And then it works, and just like that washes over you, and you're like, I'm so badass, like look at this thing I just made right here. And you're like showing everybody, you're like so excited about it. That feeling of like building a thing and it works and it's awesome and a million people are using it, and you're saving lives, or you're doing this or that, or like whatever, like it's so satisfying to have your creations out there. And not everybody can like build physical things. Like some of us like are not skilled in that way, but you still get to be creative, you still get to like make things. And you can work in any industry, anything, like whatever you're like, I think this thing is cool, like be a computer scientist and work in that industry, make a difference.
Yeah, that's and becoming very prevalent now with the rapid transition of, say, education
Yeah.
into just in the last 8 months, the amount of new software websites that have been launched, new functionality that's been added to websites like Google or Jupiter Ed, has just been crazy. And that's one of the things that I've been thinking about. Is like, where are all these software engineers coming out of, and where were they at the beginning of these 8 months? Because we weren't getting these products a year ago, and then just bang, out of necessity, here they are.
Yeah,
And somebody had to have the satisfaction of making that happen. And like, why not a computer scientist?
exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So that's a pretty concise, pretty excellent reason to be a computer scientist. Problem solving and the satisfaction of completion, of like handing anything in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the nice things about school, is that like when you do hand things in or you finish a big project, you get that sense of satisfaction. And
Mm-hmm.
when I had finished, this is a metaphor I'm using because I have high schoolers watching, but when I left school for a while, I kind of like, I lost that cycle of feeling like, okay, I'd finished something. And when I handed in like my last thesis and I finished grad school, and then after like 6 months, I was thinking like, what am I doing? Like, what's the next goal? And I didn't
Yeah.
have a thing that I was immediately working for, an immediate project that was under construction. And I had to like find different ways to fill that little void, that little hole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and people always say that if you love your job, then you'll never work a day in your life. So if your job is giving you that sense of satisfaction, that sounds like a perfect field, if that's the way that your brain works.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is obviously not for everyone. I sit in front of a computer all day long. You know, I work from home in my own home office. I have a wonderful puppy that runs around and barks at me. And so, you know, you really need to be able to stand up and like look around. And I have a window that I look out, you know, which is even like those small things are really kind of important because
Yeah.
if you're an outside person, someone that needs to be up and walking around and like computer science, probably not, it's just probably not for you. And that's like fine. So you do have to like understand those constraints, but when it is for someone, I feel it's just so rewarding.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Zach, thank you so much for being here. You gave like endless wisdom. Awesome talk about leadership and education and uh, transferable skills. And I'm sure that if some computer scientists will watch this or would-be computer scientists will be inspired to pursue that more. And maybe people who aren't interested in computer science will still learn something about leadership in the business world and just like how to grow. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah. Have a good rest of your day, and I hope your other interviews are even better.
Oh, I don't know. This is definitely gonna be top of the heap. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye bye.